Welcome everybody to our quarterly conversation and Miami Children's Museum. My name is Brianna Obst, and I am the Associate Director of Theater Education and Arts at Miami Children's Museum, and my pronouns are she and hers. And I would really love for everybody to pop in the chat who they are, where they're from, and their pronouns as well, in either their name or popping in the chat as we get started in this conversation, which is exactly what it is. So we hope to engage with everybody here. Our quarterly conversations this quarter here in June is called Kids and Pride, How to Be an Ally. This is our second conversation on this topic, our first being last year. Was a wonderful success. And so here we are back again, celebrating Pride Month with our Rainbow Families programming at the museum. And we have been doing so for the past 8 years. So we're excited to continue on our tradition. Now, before we get started, I want to just let everybody know how the conversation is going to work today. We will introduce our guest speakers, and we have some pre-registered questions from many of you before showing up today, but the chat is alive, it is well, it is active. So please, if you have questions and comments, you are more than welcome to throw them into the chat. And just a reminder that this is a safe space. So we encourage conversation and dialogue, and regardless of race, gender, age, ethnicity, religious beliefs, political beliefs, we are here to converse, to learn, and to grow in our ideas, our thoughts, perception, and so much more. So welcome, and I thank you in advance for contributing to our conversation. So without further ado, enough from me, I would like to introduce to you our guest speakers from the Yes Institute. Our first one, add the spotlight. Our first guest to introduce is Joseph Zolobchak. Did I do it right? Close?
Yes. It's a complicated Ukrainian name.
Yes. So Joseph has served on staff with the Yes Institute for 26 years and has been the executive director for the past 3 years. He has co-authored 2 public health studies on school-related bullying in South Florida, and also workplace harassment and compared with inclusion trainings among helping professionals. He has co-produced and directed the LGBTQ diversity and inclusion training for the Greater Miami Convention Visitors Bureau Miami Begins With Me. So without further ado, I welcome Joseph Zolobchak. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us this evening. It's really a pleasure to be here. And I really look forward tonight to your questions. Feel free to put your questions in the chat. And we also have another amazing mom here, and Brianna's going to introduce her next.
Yes, that is right. So also joining us from the Yes Institute is Milagros de Valle, or Millie. Now, Millie is a dedicated mother of 3. Her professional background is in healthcare operations, and in the past 3 or so years has really dedicated her time and chosen to invest her time in sharing her own story and her experiences to help children, young adults, and parents in any way that she can. So thank you, Millie, for giving up your time and joining us here this evening.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, and I hope I'm able to help. And like Joseph said, please make sure that you ask us any questions, and we'll be happy to help and welcome everybody. And thank you for having us.
Excellent. Thank you. And if you just joined us, please put your name in the chat, where you're tuning in from. We'd love to know the widespread of this conversation. So say hi and where you're hailing in from. Now, to begin with, we have thrown out a couple of times the name Yes Institute. So unless you did research beforehand, you may not know what the Yes Institute is. So I'm going to throw over to Joseph to tell us a little bit about the work that they do. And then we're going to move on to some questions. Thank you, Joseph.
And thank you. So we're a nonprofit community-based organization. We're based here in Miami, Florida, and South Florida is really our home. We serve early learning coalitions, the school system, both public, private, and religious schools. We work to train medical and mental health providers, because as you can see, our main focus really surrounds suicide prevention, bullying and violence prevention. And we also even do corporate diversity and inclusion trainings, because parents are very busy people. And sometimes the best way to connect with parents is actually doing workplace training so they can know what's going on about the young people in their school communities. So that's a little bit about our work. And a lot of our sessions are really very much like what we're doing tonight with Miami Children's Museum. It's just a conversation. It's allowing people to open up, ask questions. If you turn on the news or see what's going on in the world, there's a lot of conversations about gender and orientation and young people. And we are a resource here in the community so people don't feel like they're alone, that they have support, and there's people that are going to be able to converse and learn about these topics in our rapidly changing world. So that's a little bit about us.
Yeah, and so Joseph, when we met earlier a couple of weeks ago, I asked, we're going to have people from all over the country, and I see we've got people from California tuning in, Minneapolis, Pasadena, California. Yes Institute, you mentioned, is not solely a South Florida, Miami institution.
Yes, thanks to the advent of Zoom. Even before the pandemic, we would travel actually across the hemisphere. I've done work in Canada. I've done work in Bogota, Colombia, Mexico, Puerto Rico. So just a month ago, we did a training for a K-8 Montessori school in Oregon. So, thanks to Zoom, our work is really accessible in many, many places.
Excellent. And so for anybody tuning in and want to know more about Yes Institute or want to use them as a resource, you will have that. And just a reminder that at the end of this, we had all your emails in our registration. We're compiling a resource list based on the discussion and things mentioned today that you'll receive in an email post the conversation today. So you don't have to necessarily be rapidly taking notes. So my first question to both you, Millie, and Joseph is one that was pre-registered. And that is just the basics, if there is such a thing, of the basics of what is an ally, and how can you be a genuine, meaningful ally as opposed to a performative or ingenuine ally, or doing it for show, I guess.
So yeah, let's start off with this question. And, I think I don't think it's so binary. I think really allyship, I'll just share from my own personal experience. You can Google academic definitions and whatnot, but I think, first of all, it's a lifelong learning process. So, and it's always a commitment to learning and educating oneself, watching documentaries, reading books, reading news articles, asking questions, and discovering ways in which, through genuine conversation, how one can be helpful. And also sometimes knowing when it's appropriate to ask questions and when it's not. In our role at Yes Institute, we are sharing that we are an educational resource. So I'm available almost 24/7 to engage with people. But if you're meeting people from any community, you always want to just check in about the appropriateness and say, hey, would you be willing to have a conversation with me? I'd like to develop my allyship skills. Can I ask you a few questions? And then, noticing the person's body language. Not everybody is cut out to be an educator for their particular identity group, right? So, but there are a lot of people that are happy to do so, and that is personally one of my passions. So I guess I'll share a little bit transparently. So I was born and raised in Western New York. My mom was also a teacher at my school, and I went to private religious schools, and there was no conversation about this. So when I was in the process of coming out to my own family, I was worried that I would be rejected by my faith community, by my parents, and I went through a lot of, struggles. And happy to say that, my relationship with my parents is in a very different place today. However, as a part of our work, over the years, we now serve a lot of transgender young people and families with transgender kids. And I consider myself an ally in that regard, because I haven't had that lived experience. So I've had to do a lot of learning, listening, asking questions, so that I can be a good ally for people that are impacted by gender identity in young people. And the things that I mentioned, those are the things I practice, so that we can make sure that young people are safe and families have resources. So that's how I hopefully that summed it up. And Millie, would you like to take on that question too?
Yes, so I am a little bit of my background as well. I'm from Puerto Rico. I'm half Puerto Rican, half Cuban. I was raised on a very conservative Hispanic Catholic household. So I did what society, right? Society kind of like tells us to do, right? You marry a man, you have kids, etc. And it was not until later on in life that I came out. And I have my partner for 15 years. We have raised our 3 kids, but I realized, and I'm a volunteer with the Yes Institute, and I saw that our little circle, little family was doing good, but then I saw outside of our circle, people needed to be more comfortable seeing other people like them. And I think that's a good way for us to be an allies, to show people and show the world that they're not alone, that there's other families like yours, other kids like yours. And if I had had these type of resources, like yes, like the Museum of Children, speaking to parents, to educators about gender and inclusiveness and diversity, probably my life would have been a little bit easier. And that's the reason why I am dedicating any volunteer efforts to helping others, to just sharing my story with parents, with teens, with children, so that they can see that they are not alone and there's other people like them. I actually had an old coworker reach out to me a couple of years ago when we used to work together. She was engaged and had and we got married, and I was recently coming out during that time, and I didn't want to make it public, but I was at work and we worked closely, and I told them. So then years later, she comes out as a lesbian, and she reached out to me and she's like, I remember when you did it and how strong you were, and although things were not perfect, you did it. So that encouraged me to do it. And that's when I decided I need to speak. I need to talk to other people, share what I know, what I've lived, and hopefully it'll help someone else.
A question, it was raised a couple of times in our registration process. We have a lot of people here from children's museums across the country, or educational institutions. And the question is how, if your institution, your workplace, your school, your museum is hesitant to do Pride programming, how can you approach that as a person working within an institution? How do you show them or let them know, it isn't divisive, it's needed, it's important, it's relevant? Sometimes you could feel like, employees could feel like they're either fighting a battle or they're alone. They don't have the voice to make these things happen. So what's some advice you can give to helping persuade leaders of institutions or education, schools and so forth?
This is a really excellent question, and it's very hard to persuade people. So I don't do that. And I actually don't recommend anybody else try to either, because you turn on the news, everybody's trying to persuade or convince somebody. And in a way that actually just allows people to get more entrenched sometimes in their point of view. So I know this sounds like, you're kind of like back to the basics, but it really is about having conversations. So an organization or a community is really ready to host a Pride something in a way that works in their community, their city, their microculture. And I think it's about being prepared to have readiness and what I like to call enrollment conversations. If I could share some examples, working with the Miami History Museum, they were, this was a couple years back, they wanted to do a Queer Miami exhibition, and it's about the sort of the queer or gay and transgender history of South Florida, going all the way back, and where we are present day. And they got calls from like donors and longtime patrons who said, we're going to pull our membership if you, I'm not about this gay stuff. And so they called us and like, oh my gosh, what do we do? And I said, don't resist the conversation, welcome it. Because if we're not in dialogue and conversation about diversity, and by the way, diversity doesn't mean everybody all agrees and wants to do the same thing. So we offered some training for them about how to welcome the conversation and really listen to their donors and their patrons and come to a place that's like, look, it's our job as a history museum. We have to record all of the history we like and the history we don't like. And if this is not your particular favorite exhibit, you don't have to come. We have 3 other exhibits happening later in the fall. And let me share with you, what would you like to put your money towards? And once they launched the exhibit and we had opening day, because they took the time to have those conversations with key stakeholders and donors who were really upset about this, there was no upset. The exhibit ran for 6 months and it was great. And a lot of the museum patrons learned some new skills in de-escalating angry customers as well. So I actually feel like it was a very positive learning experience for everyone. I think, with diversity, it's like, we have to remember true diversity is going to also include voices that disagree with certain things. That's authentic diversity. So it's also the courage to step into that space and the willingness to really listen and engage. And by the way, I know it can be challenging at times because a lot of times people's beliefs can bump up against our own deeply held values. So it's also being responsible for that and knowing when, okay, I'm here as an employee and I have a job to do. And then when I get home, I can sort of unload my personal feelings about this particular patron. But at the same time, we're really all in one community in one neighborhood. So it's an interesting skill set that I feel like I'm really glad this question was asked so we could kind of explore these deeper aspects.
Yeah, I think, something for us at Miami Children's Museum, it's in our mission, it's ingrained in our programming that we're here for, all children and all families. And, my advice to other institutions is look at your mission, read it. And if there's, a case to be made to start the discussion of like, here's what our organization, our foundation is based on, and we're not actually including all children or all families. That's definitely where our conversation starts at our museum. Millie, did you have anything else to add on that?
Definitely, like Joseph mentioned, and I bet you we can all think that we think the same, and we might sit down and have a conversation and we'll find things that we are not going to agree upon. So it's by having those conversations, right, that we learn about each other. And when someone presents, and like Joseph said, we're not here to persuade anyone, and we cannot even try. I mean, and that goes for a lot of other topics, especially in today's world. It's really just about kind of like listening to understand. I think a lot of people are just used to listening and have a response ready, and just listening to understand where the person is coming from, and finding a common ground and speaking on what we know, and then let's learn about what we don't know.
Great. Another question that has come up is how to engage LGBTQ, the LGBTQ plus community in your institution, whether it's organizations, families, youth. How do you bring them in to your building, through your doors?
This is also a really great question, and I can share with you also, well, Miami Children's Museum, let's use this is an example, connecting with a community organization that is youth focused, because we have a lot of families that our organization serves, and having a session just as we're doing this evening, because we are a long-serving organization within the community of Miami. This is a way to partner and create opportunities. And it was funny when we were in the prep call earlier, Millie was like, I think I've only been to the Miami Children's Museum once, and now I want to go back and check it out. So
you have 3 kids, come on.
I also want to share what I would say co-created with the History Miami Museum, because it was really spectacular. So I talked about the Queer Miami historical exhibition, and they partnered with us. And by the way, I just wanted to, Nico, if you could just wave hello. Nico is one of our youth leaders at Yes Institute, and we have a youth council, and we're teaching them life skills and coaching, and they also do some public speaking with us. And downstairs in the foyer, what History Miami did was they created a youth exhibit, and it was called the Doors Project. And these youth did these amazing sort of expressionistic artwork about what their life is. And the door was like a sort of a metaphor, doors being closed in their faces, doors of possibilities opening, coming out of the closet, like, and the youth just ran with that. And so when visitors came in, they could see the youth exhibit, and then they also got connected to, there was like information cards that were free to the public about the work of Yes Institute, because we are a suicide and bullying prevention agency. And as a result of that, parents would come in and was like, my kid's getting bullied in school. They're not even gay, but I don't know who to talk to. I'm getting nowhere. Can I call you? I'm like, absolutely. Let me show you how to navigate the school system, because we are the 4th largest school district in the country. You can, kind of some families can get a little bit lost in the shuffle because it's so big. So these are just some of the beautiful things that came out of that experience. And most recently, the History Miami Museum did an audio preservation project with gay and lesbian couples who had been together for like 30, 40, and 50 years, long before there was gay marriage. They were a couple and they were committed to each other. And so the museum trained our youth to interview the couples, and now that's recorded, and it's going to be a traveling exhibition here in Florida and hopefully throughout the country very soon. So this gave young people life skills. They learned how to do interviewing. They learned how to work audio equipment. And then it was an actual exhibit at the museum. And it was just a fantastic partnership. And our youth today, like anytime I mention, oh, History Miami wants to have a meeting with us, they're like screaming to get on the call. And just, it was just a wonderful experience. So just those two examples, creating community collaborative projects together is amazing. And in each city, there is some type of youth serving organization close or nearby that you could connect to that can really bring awareness of your museums and your institutions, and really highlight authentic work being done in the community.
Yeah, I think that collaboration aspect, right? Like we're a children's museum, so we could collaborate with queer families, queer youth, and have them part of the cell, not just be putting on our story times, our interactive like art programming that we have, but from the get-go, one thing we've been working on at our museum is when we have our themed months, we have a great, but you can see in my background, this cone right here is where our front check-in is, and there's wide open space. So we have been engaging with communities to help for our themed months create some sort of entrance, some sort of like, boom, you were here for, we just had Asian American Pacific Islander month, and we had a Korean, I think it was the Korean Society of FIU, Student Society of FIU, create like a whole like little welcoming exhibit kind of thing as you come in. So that kind of collaboration, as soon as you walk in, like History in Miami, the door is like, here it is, welcome, and can really start conversations within the community and within your museum or your educational institution. Millie, did you have anything else to add to that in terms of like how to engage the community?
Definitely. Something that, we had to navigate was the conversation with our children, right? So how to explain to them that they had, two moms, right? And I think that a lot of parents, right, might be struggling with that, and how we did it. And it is something that I would like to share, and I think it's important. And I think Yes does a very good job too. But what we did was talking about the different types of families, right? Just the diversity of one mom, one dad, two moms, two dads, grandmother, grandfather, and just having the children exposed at an early age of the different types of family, of how diverse, family can be, or what we call family. So we used to actually, back then, they were giving a show Modern Family on ABC. So that was actually something that we used to watch together, because it did show the two dads raising a little girl, because they didn't really have any friends that had two moms or two dads. So we really had to do a lot of dialogue and reinforcing. And I think the fact that kids are able to see that if they can, it is just, it shows them that the world is just bigger than what they see at home, and that they belong.
Mm-hmm. I have a question for you, Millie. As a queer family, right? What, when you go into places, for your kids, right? Whether it's, the movies, a museum, a school, what makes you feel welcomed? What makes you know that this is a safe space for my partner, and my kids? Are there sort of signs? Are there triggers? Is it a feeling? Like, if you have any insight from your personal experience.
Well, definitely, that's something that even when we travel, we choose the places that we travel to, because we're like, we want to make sure that we're welcome, and especially because of the kids. If I see a pride flag, I definitely were like, okay, we're good here.
Mm-hmm.
This is a place where, we're comfortable, and people who just see us as people, that they are, and we have been in places where they see the two of us, my partner and I, and the three kids, and my kids are now teenagers and my daughter's an adult, but you automatically feel because people don't realize, they think that you have to do or say something, but they don't. Just the body language, you feel some kind of a wall build up, and you automatically like, you see how other people are treated versus how you're treated. So I think it's just the fact that we walk into a place and we were treated like everybody else, and we were greeted like everybody else, and everybody else was greeted like everybody else, because that goes for race and ethnicity and so forth. I think that's where we feel comfortable, and that what made us feel, okay, we're going to keep coming back here because this is a good place where we're all safe.
And I guess that boils down to, staff training and staff education, right? Having your team on the same page. You can have visual signs, you can have, a pride flag, you could have all gender bathrooms. But if the people that work in the Institute don't give off that welcoming, right, vibe, then that's a problem. So I think, yeah, definitely you've really hit it on the nail on the head in terms of like that's staff training. That is,
and also, and I hate to interrupt, but we did walk into a place that the person didn't want to wait on us.
Wow.
When they kind of realized, they brought us the water and they changed servers.
Mm-hmm.
And it was uncomfortable. I didn't want to get up and make a scene because we're already seated, and the kids did notice, but I just didn't make a big deal, because again, as parents, your kids are looking up to us. So they're looking, how do you react? So we kind of have to set the tone. And that goes for a lot of these conversations as well. The kids look to see, what are we doing? And that kind of gives them a reassurance of, then, are we okay?
Mm-hmm.
But definitely welcoming, just treating everybody the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a comment there from Susanna, Susanna's iPhone, actually, a comment. So saying just today, our almost 4-year-old asked us, and maybe Millie, if you can, so I don't butcher the Spanish, take the lead on that quote there. Do you see it in the chat?
Porque no tengo papa?
Yes, porque no tengo papá, yes.
Yeah. So for us non-Spanish speakers, Susanna, I see you've,
yes.
Would you like to share? We'd love you to share. Yeah.
No, absolutely, Mila. I think you hit it on the spot. This morning, actually, he's going to turn 4 next week, and he was asking us out of the blue. And even though we have books of same-sex parents, of all types of families, and we've always really normalized it, he came out of the blue and he asked, why, porque no tengo papá? And what you're just saying, Millie, is very reassuring, that the way we are educating, we have 2 sons, the way we're educating our sons is, the right, the same way that you did with yours. So, at least that's very, very reassuring. And to your point about traveling, it is, we pick where we go, we do our research beforehand and all of that, because of, not, it's a risky subject sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
It is. And now that the kids are older, the boys are 16 and 17, my daughter's 27. And sometimes I want to say, I want to go here. And they're like, Mom, are you sure? I don't know if we're going to, be okay there. And I'm like, yeah, you're right.
Thank you. No, this is great.
Yeah. And both of you also touched on something, both Susanna and Millie, about picture storybooks, right? For our kids, we're told, read every night, read every day, constantly. And just the simple thing of diversifying your home bookshelves, your classroom bookshelves, your museum bookshelves, your story times, all year round. You can be reading books that have a wide range of representation, and not just pulling them out during Pride Month, but they're there and they're on your shelves and they're representing all people, all communities. And that's a great in for the tiny humans in our lives, whether they are in a queer family or not. It's just as important to have that. Either they're seeing themselves in what they're reading with their parents or their grown-ups in their lives, or they're seeing people unlike themselves. Both are just as important to, help our society grow and be welcoming for all. So
Right.
you both really spoke to that, which is lovely. Okay, and feel free, please, if anybody wants to like either raise your virtual hand or pop something in the chat, or take off their video cameras, put on their video cameras. We do welcome discussion. Joseph, was that a virtual hand I saw, or no? Just clearing the air. Excellent. So another question that we have here in our chat, sorry, not in the chat, in the pre-registered, or in why people are here. Some people have asked that they want to get more resources for kids and Pride and how to support families all year long. And so we just talked about, staff training, right? Having, and I know that definitely comes from the top, right? What is your vision? What is your mission as an institution? And how does that filter down? And how can we train our staff to be welcoming and inclusive of all, and in your hiring practices? But what can we offer people here today, as a resource to, or something tangible elements to make their environments, their homes, their schools, their museums, their libraries, to be welcoming, for kids, and to encourage pride in themselves, in their families, all year round?
Yes, that's a really great question, and I'm just going to share a few screens.
Yeah, go for it.
And this kind of crosses the the situation and the age group where you may hear these conversations. And in everyday life of children, there is a ton of what we call gender binary assumptions and biases that young people are picking up on from us and our society. They don't just come with this, right? They're picking up on things, and you'll start to hear them say, like, I have some examples, like girls don't play with Legos, and a boy can't play with a doll, and things that are very gender rigid. And just to share one anecdote from our work with the early learning teachers, they serve 0 to 5 in childcare centers. They have allowed boys to play with any toy in the toy box, including dolls. And then the parents would come in to pick up the kids and see a boy playing with a doll and have like this like extreme reaction of, get that doll out of my hand, I don't want him to be gay. And then the childcare center worker, only because they've had to go to school and have had children in gender psychology courses and all of this stuff, got to really work on those biases in our society about, no, a boy can touch a doll. That's not going to make him, a toy is not going to make a kid do anything. In fact, it's going to teach the child, regardless of who they are, how to caretake and be maybe a good dad someday if they want to have kids, or to take gentle care of like a baby, because they don't all have their bones and muscles. Babies are very delicate, and so we've actually gone in and done training at certain childcare centers to help coach the childcare workers to de-escalate the parent and engage in a conversation and realize we wouldn't have a toy in this toy box if it was harmful in any way to any child. And I know you're having a reaction that goes against your, what you expect, but they're just playing, they're just being kids. These are important things to just notice and listen when kids say something that is a bias, and that you can interject with inquiry. Well, Sally likes to play with Legos, and she's a girl and she's pretty good at Legos. Did you see what she builds? Should we not let Sally play with Legos when she does really good at it? And then, it gives the child a moment to be like, No, Sally does good with Legos. I guess maybe girls can play, you know, in an age appropriate way, you can have conversations. So that, and what we see from research is that the more rigid biases that kids hold on to, that has an impact on their ability to develop as a whole human being, and can later on limit what they feel is possible for themselves. Even as simple as girls saying, you know, girls are bad at math. And then, well, why do we have a STEM, you know, science, technology, engineering, and math crisis by middle, high school, and then college entrance for girls? So these are all conversations that these are the tools. It is through your voice and through your inquiry and through your conversation. New practices that are coming about is like, you know, maybe at the Miami Children's Museum, you have like a summer camp program or you're doing a tour. Just be cautious with saying, okay, boys line up over here, girls line over there, because then it reinforces. Or if there's a kid who's questioning their gender and is not sure, they don't know what line to go into, because they want to please you and do the right thing. And then you're forcing a choice on them, versus saying, okay, if your name begins with A through the letter N, line up over here, and then M through Z, you're going to line up over here. And then it's just different ways to, you know, we do have to line up and group children, but you can do lots of creative ways. Or I gave you a pink ribbon, so or a yellow ribbon, so the yellow group is here. So you can do colors, you can do different ways to break up youth. Even conversations like now, like let's say a parent to parent says, you know, something that, oh, no child of mine, I would let them be gay, or I could never have a kid if they were transgender. I would disown them. These are real things that parents have shared. But you know what? A lot of those parents who have said that in the past, they now have come to us at Yes Institute years later because their child did come out and they had no place to go. And then they felt lots of tremendous guilt for even saying those things. And then we have a conversation. So go, okay, let's slow down. How did you grow up and what did your parents teach you? Oh my gosh, they said gay is bad and stay away from it. Well, great. Well, we're all learning now. This is a new shift in many societies across the globe of what was once secret and taboo is now just a part of life because it's always been there. So it's important that we listen to each other and engage in conversation, and also allow ourselves some grace, because we pretty much all grew up in a world that said gay is not the greatest thing, and anything that goes against the gender expectations is wrong. You know, many of us have come from families and societies that have these things. So we're asking you to just consider intervening, or even if you don't know what to say in the moment, especially if a young person says, you know what, I'm going to come back to you. Let mom, dad, aunt, uncle think about what you said, but I'm going to come back to you with a question. And then you can check in with another adult and say, you know, what would be an age appropriate response? My kid is asking me what a drag queen is because they saw it in a commercial. Now, how do I say in an age appropriate way so I can educate my kid and not, you know, not hide something from them? So these are all tools. And as well, Brianne, you started to mention this in terms of the staff training is, just to share with you, almost all the major US airlines now, when you get on the flight, they do not say, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. They've had a policy shift and they just say, well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to flight 369 or whatever. A lot of major theme parks in the US have gotten rid of that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. They now just say, hello, everyone. Because even in a crowd, not everybody is a lady or a gentleman or a boy or a girl. So even in our language, we're leaving people out. So it's a practice to start with gender neutral language. And then if you're one-on-one and they give you contextual clues, my husband, my wife, my son, well, now you know the appropriate gendered vocabulary to use because they've informed you, okay? And of course, there's amazing documentaries, books, podcasts that you can listen to that can spark our curiosity for learning about different groups of people and communities. So here's some examples. So I just wanted to share those with you.
That's great. Thank you, Joseph, for that. I was wondering, I lost the question. about, exactly that. We're talking about language, and sometimes it's been ingrained in us in a way to be like, boys and girls sit down and so forth. So just sort of, opening up that to be more gender neutral in how you greet people and welcome people. A question if for, an educator, an institution who are doing, Pride programming, celebrating inclusivity and diversity, is not always received well, right, by other parents, by the general public. And we at Miami Children's Museum hasn't, necessarily received all positive feedback about the programming we've been doing. And how do we teach, our frontline staff who, welcome to Miami Children's Museum. Here's the agenda. We have Rainbow Families Month, and they get not necessarily a positive reaction. What is some sort of tips in terms of, when that interaction happens for our staff? And sometimes our staff are young, right? They're young in their 20s or late teens, who don't necessarily have years of experience dealing with this, how to handle these kinds of situations.
So we have whole 4-hour workshops on this very subject.
Let's get started.
Where we actually role play and take on an upset customer who's and this was what we did with History Miami Museum. We had them role play exactly things almost verbatim that were said to them at the front desk, like, oh, I have my 5-year-old kid with me and there's this queer exhibit and I'm really upset about that. And, so I could just give you the 2-minute version, which is number one, acknowledge the emotion that the customer is expressing. Don't go to try to fix it or convince or change their mind about anything. Oh my gosh, ma'am, I see you're really upset about this and you're kind of angry and you're worried about even taking your kid into the exhibit. Right away, the customer is going to experience, I'm being listened to and they're validating my feelings. Okay. Now, you don't have to agree with, nobody always agrees with everybody's feelings, but you can validate the emotion. And then you could share, look, I know you came all the way to downtown Miami to visit the museum. Is there another exhibit I could recommend? We actually do have a children's area. This exhibit is only in a limited part of the museum. You don't have to go through there. How could I share with you some ideas that could make your visit really great today? And then continue to offer suggestions. Not everybody has to like every exhibit. If you go into an art museum, everybody kind of has their favorite style of art. Not everybody's going to appreciate all the art on the wall from every single time period. So it's really no different. So, and then there are additional skills that is way too long for this call, but what I'm speaking to is called our communication toolbox. And it's really a part of our customer service training that we also offer to tourism and hospitality professionals. And we can have further conversations about that if anybody's on the call interested. But I'll share with you, we put the History Miami Museum frontline staff through the session, and they all felt not only to deal with the Queer Miami exhibit, but all kinds of customer service issues that come up. And when I go visit the museum, they would come up to me like, I love that course. It really taught me a whole lot. And it even helped me deal with my parents when I'm upset at them and they do things that I don't like. And so that's something that we do offer.
That's great. And a really nice starting point of acknowledging, right? Acknowledging the feeling. For us at the Children's Museum, it's not, we don't have a specific Pride exhibit, but it's more about the programs. And so, our line would be, the programs are optional. So you can choose to partake in the story time or the sensory activity or not, or just enjoy the exhibits. But yeah, that definitely a longer training would be helpful to many. I have another question here. I'm guessing from an educator, and specifically here in Florida, there's been a lot of legislation that comes across as anti-LGBTQ, and one here that says, like, how can educators, be inclusive, be welcoming to all, educators that may have a child who is questioning their gender or their identity, a child that has, two moms, two dads. How can they acknowledge that and be a safe space for these children, without violating the Don't Say Gay bill that's just been passed here in Florida? How can we still be all inclusive in our educational institutions?
Yes. So the name of the bill is called Parental Rights in Education.
Mm-hmm.
It's been dubbed the Don't Say Gay bill, just so we speak accurately.
Yeah.
And so I actually have been in touch with both officials from Broward County Public Schools and Miami-Dade County Public Schools, the 4th and 6th largest school districts in the country. And what I've heard from them is they're not quite sure yet, because they have to wait till the policy passes, which happens July 1st. And then there's going to be other meetings at the district level. But I can assure you of a couple of things. Number one, if you see anti-gay bullying in schools, which, by the way, is one of the most prevalent forms of bullying,
Mm-hmm.
this is not, this is interrupting and intervening on any type of bullying is not a part of the bill. Ironically, at the same time in Florida, we also have bullying policies that say teachers must intervene, and we also have that in Miami-Dade and Broward County Public Schools. So if you see students attacking or making like a microaggressive comment, you are within your rights to say, look, we don't tolerate that kind of conversation. You're isolating a particular group and making them the butt of a joke. I don't stand for that in my class. So you can continue to create a safe learning environment for your youth. Another thing that I'd want to offer, and I have cleared this with the school districts, is Yes Institute has always actually done PTA presentations, which are after school just with the parents. And we're really doubling down about reminding people that they have that opportunity. So teachers that are seeing stuff happening with the young people that they feel is kind of beyond the scope of just doing their education and they want additional support, connect us with the PTA. We are happy to present, and I've done several PTA sessions, both in public, private, and religious schools this year, this school year. And we'd be happy to start booking our calendar once we get into the fall and the new school year starts. Because working with your PTA or an after-school club, like an equity or student kindness club, they have different kinds of clubs where youth can gather outside of the 9 to 3 curriculum that happens in schools. All of that is not impacted by the bill. So again, I just want to let you know that Yes Institute has free grant money to do this type of work in the schools, and is of no cost to your school community if you are a public school or a charter school in all of South Florida or any schools outside of Florida.
Great. That's wonderful to know, and to approach, if it's bullying is the issue, right? It's not necessarily what they're poking fun at, or how, it's bullying is the problem, and that's the disruption kind of thing. We have about 5 minutes left. I was wondering if there was anybody who wanted to ask a specific question to either Millie or Joseph. Can either pop it in the chat or raise your virtual hand. I want to make sure that you're here and you've taking something away. If we haven't gotten to a topic that you wanted to address, like, please, now is the opportunity to voice that, to type it in, to raise your hand. We want to make sure that everybody here is walking away with something tangible that they can take back to their workplace, to their families, to their students, or however you come here. So yeah, if anybody has a anything they wanted to ask. Now's the opportunity while we have the last few minutes. Yes, Carter. Yeah.
I just wanted to thank you so much for this session. And I don't have any specific questions, although I've been looking at the Yes Institute on the side, or at Port Discovery Children's Museum in Baltimore. And really all of the topics were really relevant to some of the conversations that we've been having at the museum, and more with our board, less with our staff. And so I'm really grateful for this. So thank you for organizing it, and we will be in touch after this call as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Carter, for your comments. Anybody else we're having some lovely feedback there in the chat. Anybody else with a question? Susanna, do you have a question? No? Okay. No?
I'm sorry, I'm driving, so I can't see if hands are up, and I'm sorry if I'm interrupting somebody.
No, go for it, Kristen. All you.
This was lovely. Thank you so much for hosting it. And I definitely want to check out that communications toolkit for my team. I'm in charge of the professional learning for my team, and I think it would be such a great toolkit, and it centers around a lot of what we are trying to talk about at KidSpace, about using reflective language and how to move away from non-gendered language. And that can be really difficult for people because we are so used to getting up in front of audiences and saying, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, or so I would love to get a little bit more information. If that is available on the website, happy to peek there. But if you send that out afterwards, I'd be super excited to learn more about ways we can either collaborate on a training or toolkit for our team.
Thank you, Kristen. Yeah, Joseph, do you, on one of the slides, you have your website or how to reach you guys? We'll also put it in a resource, the resource packet we're compiling post this conversation, but just for now.
Yes, and really quick, Kristen, and for everybody, I'm also putting in the chat, the easiest way to get a hold of us is info@yesinstitute.org. Because once you submit an email here, it goes to multiple staff members, and then one of us will get back to you as soon as we can. And I will put up also other ways to connect with us is obviously through social media. So here's all of our channels. I just want to do a quick plug. We have a bowling event, very family-friendly, fun event at Bird Bowl in Miami. If you're interested, you can go to our website here. And we have one brief last activity, but Brianne, before I do our post survey, I wanted to see, I think you had some other things that you needed to do before we wrap up.
Yeah, just quickly though, we do have a question from Emily, if you want to have a look at that one. The question says, a parenting question. I dress my male-bodied child from both sides of the aisle. All colors are so cute. Once or twice, a parent at a park has made a negative comment. Should I say something to them to model for my toddler or let it go?
You know, Emily, that's Liz, you're the parent and it's your call. And sometimes you have to, you know, pick, do you want to have that conversation today? Or are you in a hurry and you just want to scoop up your kid and get in the car because you got to go grocery shopping? But if you do say something, it could be, and sometimes it takes biting one's tongue a little bit because we all know how to do a snappy comeback, but it could be, look, I know that this, you know, don't take it inwards, have it reflect back outwards and say, wow, I see you're having a reaction to how I dress my child. And I don't, I'm trying to show them that, you know, you don't even have to explain or justify, just say, I got it. You know, my kid is, that's a confront for you, how I've dressed my child and how they're expressing themselves. And that's it. You don't have to explain or defend, you know, and you can also let that one go. It's up to you if you want to get engaged in that. And it depends on the context. If the person is sincerely coming to you and being like, can I ask you a question about why you dress your kid like that? They might be open to a conversation. Otherwise, it could just get into a debate and you probably don't want, we don't need any more of those in our lives. So Emily, it's really up to you, and you got to just keep yours and your child's safety first and foremost. I would always caution you about that. And if you have an opportunity where there's a little bit more listening and give and take, and you're willing to have the conversation, then, go for it.
Yeah, you definitely need to read the situation to make that call as well. Yeah. So we are at 9:01, everybody. So that is time for us to wrap up. And we thank everybody for joining us and spending their Wednesday evening, or I'm not sure of your time zones, what it is for you, but we do thank you. Here at Miami Children's Museum, we think it's really important to have these conversations, and we will continue to do so. We do have more quarterly conversations coming up, so be on the lookout for that every quarter. And we look forward to bringing more Pride programming and other kinds of programming to you all. This weekend at Miami Children's Museum is our big Rainbow Families celebration. We've been celebrating all month, but this is our special weekend. So you can join us from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. at the museum. Get tickets online. Our website is miamichildrensmuseum.org. You can get your tickets in person, but we do recommend getting them online so you can come on in right away and join in the fun with your family. And yes, Joseph put in the chat a survey. So we would love for you to take the time to fill it out. Let us know who you are, what you thought of the program. It helps us to be able to validate these kinds of things to anybody who is against it, but and also just to know what you need, know what you want as a community, and so we can continue to serve you. So we appreciate you sending us that survey. The event code there is family, and it's not case sensitive, and that would be wonderful. And Joseph and Millie, thank you so much for joining us. We do highly recommend everybody checking out the Yes Institute. They are a wonderful resource nationwide, thanks to Zoom. And again, we'll be sending out a list of resources and things we discussed throughout today's conversation to everybody that is here and registered to partake. So yeah, without further ado, Millie and Joseph, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I just want to add a comment. It starts here in this room with all the people who are here. We might not be able to change the world in one day, but we can start in our households. We can start with our neighbors, with the people that we know. And the message will continue. And it's a difficult conversation. They're not easy conversations to have, but we must have them, and we must have them in a space where it's safe.
Thank you, Millie, there. Yes, wise words, one step at a time, right? We have to begin somewhere. There's a great quote that's just, there's one, change is one conversation at a time, or just begin anywhere, right? Sometimes you don't know where to start, whether it's writing something or, but for something like this, just begin anywhere. So yes, thank you, Joseph. And thank you all for joining us. And stay tuned for more wonderful quarterly conversations from Miami Children's Museum. Everybody have a great night and take care.